Alright, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Misfans, Miscellaneous Fandoms. I'm going to be doing this is version 2 of the mock draft series that I'm doing. And this one is the one with trades. So, this is what I would think is the most interesting possibility for a rundown of the draft. So, to preface this, this isn't just like what I think are the most realistic trades. This is more what do I think would be like the most interesting, most chaotic way for this whole draft to go down. So, first off, obviously, you can see off to the left that the Bengals are no longer the first pick. This trade I put in was the Dolphins trade their 5th, 18th, and next year's 2021 Houston pick that they have, all for that first pick to take a shot at Joe Burrow in case they don't trust any one of the quarterbacks this year. And this is actually proposed by the Bengals in my version because the Bengals actually decide to take a risk and sign Cam Newton and build their entire roster from like top to bottom in this draft and then bring Cam Newton on at the same time to make sure that they have a good team. They've got good halfbacks, good receiving core when healthy. I think this would just be the most interesting way for this to go down. Now, do I find it super realistic? No, but would it be fun? Yes, it would. So this would be another not necessarily great choice by the Bengals, but it would be a shot that they'd be willing to take due to the fact that Trevor Lawrence is next year, and if Cam Newton doesn't pan out, well, they end up with Trevor Lawrence. So now with the first pick, the Dolphins are still going to take Joe Burrow. They're just going to take the guy that's the first guy off the board. They're going to take the quarterback. That's why they trade up, because they don't necessarily trust Tua with his injuries now, and they're not in love with Herbert. They think he's just a decent quarterback, so I'm going to have them trade up, take Burrow the second they see the opportunity with the Bengals signing Cam Newton, and let's keep on moving down. The Redskins go, same thing I said before, Chase Young. And here we have no change. You would think that I would say there'd be a trade with the Lions, but considering the Bengals and Chargers are no longer worried about teams trading up past them to get quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks are going to follow them, they're not looking at trades anymore. So the Lions are just going to take Jeffrey Okudah. And then the Giants, as I said before, I think Simmons is the best player available at that point in time. So I think they take Simmons. Even though a lot of people think they're going to take an offensive lineman, I think they're going to go with a defensive player here. Just taking the best player available. Now, the Bengals, since they just signed Cam Newton, they're not going to draft a quarterback. They are going to decide to take an offensive lineman, and they're going to go with the guy who showed out at the combine. They're going to go with Wirfs. They're going to go with the guy who left the best impression most recently in Wirfs. Now the Chargers, since they have Tyrod Taylor, they're going to take the risk on Tua still. So they are going to draft the guy who they think will be sitting behind Tyrod for 1 year, if at all, and if they have an injury, they at least have a very solid guy to start right behind him. Now, there's another trade coming up at 7. The Buccaneers really want offensive line. Their offensive line isn't really the strongest right now, and they just got Tom Brady. They really would like to stack their offensive line to be able to protect him and just have the most formidable offense, like the best offense possible. So they trade their 14th pick, their second round pick next year, and their third round pick next year to move all the way up to 7. So that way they can pick that offensive lineman because they know that those guys are going to go off the board real fast. So they take the guy who is most proven, and they go down and they take Wills. Now, the Cardinals are in the same boat as the Buccaneers. They also need an offensive lineman. So to me, I think they take, while Becton is ranked higher, and a lot of people think with his crazy size and with his athletic ability that he can keep up with the other offensive linemen, he's the top prospect. But he's also the least proven of the big four. The big four being Wirfs, Wills, Thomas, and Becton. Since he is the least proven, I think the Cardinals are going to go with the guy who proved himself year in and year out with the Georgia and helped them create one of the best rushing games. And like he's an amazing tackle. I think they're going to go with Andrew Thomas here. Now we have yet another trade. This is a very trade heavy draft, if you couldn't tell. And the Broncos are going to move up to the Jags. They are going to offer one of their 3 third round picks this year, pick 15, and their next year's second round pick, which seems like an overpay. But considering what the Broncos want here, they're willing to pay that much to move up that far. So they are going to reach up and they're going to trade up and take what they think is the best wide receiver off the board in CeeDee Lamb. The Browns, now down to them, the Browns are just going to take the best remaining tackle off the board. I pondered the idea of them trading down and just going with one of the secondary tier offensive linemen, but I don't think that's what they're going to do here. I also played with the idea that they would take the best defensive player off the board. Again, I don't think that's likely. I think they're going to take a tackle here. So they take Mekhi Becton. Now the Jets are an interesting case, but now that they have their quarterback that they like in Darnold, so that I don't think they're going to take Herbert even in this situation. So I think they're just going to take the best wide receiver off the board. And I think they're going to, since all the linemen are gone as well, I think they're going to take Jerry Jeudy. Now we have the Raiders. The Raiders, a lot of people think are going to take a wide receiver here, but I think after they see Derek Brown fall all the way down to 12, they're not going to let that go, and they're going to take the best player off the board because they think he is another tier of defensive player. And considering they added a lot to their defense in this offseason, I think they're going to take the best defensive player and best player off the board and take Derek Brown. The Eagles see their opportunity, seeing that Ruggs is gone, and seeing that the 49ers are another team who want a wide receiver. They're going to trade up to the 49ers spot, actually, but they're going to pay a hefty price. To move up just to the middle part of the first round, they're going to pay a first, second, and fourth round pick to move all the way up to 13. And in return, they get the guy they want, and they pick up a wide receiver to really bolster that core, get that speed in, and really help out Carson Wentz and get Henry Ruggs. Now, the Panthers, crazy as it is, they don't necessarily need a quarterback, but seeing Herbert fall to them at 14, and after getting all they did from the Buccaneers in that trade, they are just going to go with the best quarterback off the board in case their current quarterback isn't sufficient enough. They're going to go with Justin Herbert. Now to the Jags. The Jags are just going to take what I think they need the most. They've lost Jalen Ramsey. They need a lot of pieces. And now they have 2 picks in this draft. I don't think they're going to go with Kinlaw, even though I could easily see it. I think their biggest point of need currently is cornerback after losing Bouye and after losing Jalen Ramsey during the season. I think they desperately need corners. So I think they're going to go with the best corner off the board and take C.J. Henderson. Now, the Seahawks, not having yet signed Jadeveon Clowney, and after, they really need to keep their defense solid to be able to contend with the other strong teams in the NFL. Yes, they have Russell Wilson, and they have all these other pieces, but they really need to not lose that pass rush ability. So I think they're going to go with the best defensive lineman off the board after spending their first-round pick and their second-round pick. And they're going to move up, and they're going to take Javon Kinlaw after their trade with the Falcons, moving up to 16, and they're going to take Kinlaw from South Carolina. The Cowboys are looking at taking a cornerback, as I said before, and they're going to take Trayvon Diggs. They're just going to take the best guy right off the board. It's simple as that. The Bengals, up again at 18 after their trade with the Dolphins, are going to take I would have to say they're going to take the best wide receiver, in my mind, available. They already took an offensive lineman. I played with the idea that they take another one in Austin Jackson, but I personally think they're going to take Justin Jefferson, who I personally believe is the best wide receiver remaining in that tier of the draft. The Raiders are going to be looking at essentially like they're going to be looking at Christian Fulton. They're going to be looking at offensive line. I personally think they're going to take the best available player. And I personally think uh, it's either best available player or the best available corner. I've played around with the idea, and I think actually I'm gonna go away from what I was thinking before. I really think they need help in their secondary, and I think they're gonna go with a corner here. I think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna take the idea of just take the best player. I think they're gonna reach and they're gonna take a cornerback here because they desperately need the help there. So I think they're gonna take Christian Fulton from LSU. Two LSU Tigers right in a row. Now, the Jaguars, I think, are going to go back to best player off the board. Now, I disagree with Jordan Love being above these other defensive and offensive players. So I think they're going to take AJ Espinosa. I think he's going to go right off the board at 20. And I played with the idea of Chase on going here, but I think Espinosa is the better overall player and has proven himself a bit more than Chase on. Chason, I think, is a little bit of a product of his environment. However, that's not me saying he's not a great player. I just think Espinosa is the best available pass rusher at that spot, and I think that's what the Jaguars go with. The 49ers are going to go with also taking the best wide receiver off the board. They traded down to 21 from 13. Instead of taking the best player there, they didn't fall in love with Ruggs like a lot of the rest of the league did because they believe they can get speed and quickness at a lot of different spots in the draft. They decide to take the other speedy wide receiver in this draft and take Denzel Mims. They're going to take him at 21, so right around the spot that he's rated. And honestly, I don't think that they lose much by taking him over Ruggs. I think they're both great wide receivers. I don't think there's too much of a difference between the two. And I think that's a really good pick for the 49ers. The Vikings, desperately needing that second wide receiver, decide that they also need corners, but all the good corners are gone. Diggs and Fulton have gone off the board already, and Henderson. So, and instead of reaching to take one of the corners down here, they decide to look towards the wide receivers lower down. Now, do they take him now is the question they have to ask. Do they take them now, or do they take them with their second pick later in the draft, 3 picks later? They toy with the idea and decide instead of reaching for the wide receiver now, they're going to risk another wide receiver going off the board, and they decide to take the best cornerback off the board in A.J. Terrell from Clemson. Now the Patriots. They are clearly in sore need of a quarterback. They're not going to wait anything past 23. They're going to take their quarterback right then and there. They're not going to wait. They're not going to risk it. They need to have a guy who can get the ball downfield for them. They need to have that quarterback. And they do like Jordan Love. He showed out in the combine. He showed out all season long. We'll see what Belichick can do with the new quarterback. And if Belichick does Belichick-type things, they'll be just fine with Love under center. Now, 24 is the Saints. I think they're going to go with the best linebacker off the board. They really need help on that. And now the question is, do they take Chase on or Murray? I personally think Murray is the better fit for them stylistically, and I think he is just the better overall player than Chase on, so I think they're going to go with Murray. Now, back to the Vikings. They are not in the practice of just taking the best player available, so they are going to go down and they are going to take, where is Chenault? Man, do I have to go that far down or did I pass him? Wow, he is that far down. I disagree with that assessment. But they're going to take the big playmaker from CU, and they're going to take Laviska Shenault Jr. He was injured all year last year, or not all year, but he was battling injuries throughout the season and had injury issues, but honestly, I think he is the one that shows the most promise at being a big hitter and can be a big weapon for the Vikings. So I think they're going to reach quite a bit according to this list and take him at 25. Now the Dolphins are going to be in the same mindset of they just got their quarterback. They now need something for him to target. And I think they're going to, even though Austin Jackson is still on the board, I think they're going to be looking more towards wide receivers since they're sorely lacking there. And I think they're going to go with T. Higgins from Clemson. Now, some people might think Chenault should go after Higgins, but I think the Vikings are going to be willing to take the risk on Chenault. It's not a valuation of talent here. I think it's more the Vikings are looking for a big hitter in terms of like somebody who can easily get them 60 yards in a play and also is just super versatile versus just a traditional wide receiver. So Higgins falls to 26, Chenault goes 25. Next, we have the Falcons at 27. The Falcons need a lot. The Falcons need a lot. I think they're going to take Xavier McKinney to really bolster up their defense and provide them a safety deep downfield. I think they're going to take just the best safety available. Now we go to the Ravens. I think they're going to take Cesar Ruiz, just bolster up their offensive line, give themselves a really good power center who can also move to the guards very easily. As I said in my previous video, he's one of the guys I think very highly of. So I think he's going to go pretty high up. I think he's going to go to the Ravens just like I did in my previous video. Now the Titans are just going to take the best offensive lineman off the board. I personally debated between Cleveland and Jackson here, but I tend to agree with this list, and I think Austin Jackson is the guy who goes to the Titans at 29. After losing Jay Conklin, they need to bolster up that right side of the offensive line alongside Lewan, and I think Jackson is the best option for them to do that. Now the Packers, they are going to do something very similar. They're going to take the best offensive lineman off the board, and they're going to bolster up their offensive line and just take Cleveland. They didn't have the worst offensive line last year, but bolstering it up further would really be a big help to them. Now, the 49ers, they did like all of their running backs from last year. However, none of them showed that superstar promise. They all were solid, but honestly, a lot of them could have been a very big product of their system. I think they're going to take a shot at drafting DeAndre Swift here. It might be a bit early, but the guy has talent, and I think he could easily up the level of that offense significantly. And then the Chiefs, I think they're just going to take the best defensive player off the board, and they're going to take Chase on at 32. And that's the end result of my high trade draft. This is what I just think would be the most interesting way for things to go down. The top is very similar, just the team order is different. And I think teams are going to be looking to trade up to get certain talent, or I could easily see some teams purposely trading down. I could see the Broncos, instead of going up to 9, not thinking the price is worth it and decide to trade down more towards this 2021 range, especially if wide receivers fall and they decide they don't love Ruggs. Because Ruggs is the one I think would fall, is most likely to fall. And if they don't love Ruggs and Ruggs falls to 15, I could easily see them trade down to this spot around 24, 25, even 21 where the Eagles are, and just stockpile picks and pick guys more later in the draft instead of picking guys earlier. But yeah, this is what I have so far with the trade draft. This is not necessarily the most realistic. I just think it's the most entertaining. But thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoy it.